Chapter 89, Al-Fajr, the Daybreak. Revealed at Mecca, 30 verses. The important daybreak, which gives its name to this chapter, is the first morning of the month of Dhul Hijjah, or the month of pilgrimage, because pilgrimage gave Mecca the great importance as a trade center and made its residents enjoy a life of ease, the trade of a whole country being brought to their very doors. A warning is given here to the permission that must overtake the city, as the punishment overtook Ad, Thamud, and others. It is one of the earliest revelations. Now, just as this mentions the best 10 nights of the year, the best 10 days of the year are those that start the 12th month. Chapter 90, Al-Balad, the city, revealed at Mecca, 20 verses. The city spoken of in the first verse, from which this chapter receives its name, is Mecca. The city which, in the last chapter, has been warned of punishment overtaking it, as it has overtaken former nations, but it was to be the spiritual center of the whole world, and there is a clear prophecy in the second verse that a time would come, not only would the Muslimin not be persecuted in that city, but they would even enjoy freedom from all obligations on it, the reference being in the establishment of their true role therein. By general consent, the chapter is regarded as one of the very earliest revelations. It is assigned to the very first year of the call. Chapter 91, Ash-Shams, the sun, revealed at Mecca, 15 verses. The prophet is the son of righteousness. You. The word given in its title to this chapter, with whose rising the way to perfection is pointed out to man, but only those who purify themselves are really successful, while those who give themselves over to corruption fail to attain the object. The case of Thamud is given as an illustration. Like the last chapter, it is one of the earliest revelations. Chapter 92, Al-Layl, the night, revealed at Mecca, 21 verses. The object of this chapter is to show that the night of disbelief and ignorance, hence the title, will give place to the light of the day, inasmuch as men strive after different objects. Those who strive to establish good will have facility, while those who go after evil shall find themselves in difficulties. It is one of the earliest revelations. Chapter 93, Duha, the brightness of the day, revealed at Mecca, 11 verses. This chapter draws attention to the gradual spreading of the light of the sun of Islam, and is therefore given the title of At-Duha, or the brightness of the day. It's also a name for the early morning. The sun's risen beyond a certain point, and the last two chapters metaphorically speak of the advent of the Holy Prophet as the rising of the sun, and the metaphor is continued here. As the sunshine is not fully resplendent immediately after the rising of the sun, so truth would shine in its full brightness gradually. It is one of the earliest revelations. Chapter 94, Al-Inshirah, the expansion, revealed at Mecca, 8 verses. This chapter, like its predecessors, comforts the prophet. His difficulties were not to continue, but would soon be followed by ease, and it was sufficient indication of that his breast was opened or expanded for the truth, whence the title of the chapter. The great burden which almost broke his back, the deep anxiety for humanity, has been removed by divine revelation. This chapter is closely connected with the preceding one, to which it forms, as it were, a supplement. It is one of the earliest revelations. Chapter 95, Atin, the fig, revealed at Mecca, 8 verses. This chapter shows, by drawing a comparison between a Mosaic dispensation of which the fig is a symbol, and gives its name to this chapter in the Islamic dispensation. The man is so created that he can rise to the highest degree of eminence if he sets before himself right principles and acts on them, and that he degrades himself to the lowest position in creation if he is not guided by right principles, or, being so guided, fails to act upon them. The chapter belongs to the same early period as the other chapters preceding it. Chapter 96, Al-Alaq, the clot, revealed at Mecca, 19 verses. The first 5 verses of this chapter are, by universal admission, the first revelation which the Holy Prophet received. The chapter called the clot because of the statement made in the second verse that Allah created man from a clot of blood, which contains a hint that as a beautiful human form is evolved out of such humble origin, even so the Holy Prophet would raise humanity to the greatest eminence, morally and spiritually. Now, there's other applications with that, but this is the first prostration verse as far as chapters that started to be revealed. If the chapter was not learned entirely before the prostration point, and the other prostration point was learned, but it's the last prostration point of the Qur'an that this ends with. There's 15 in all. Chapter 97, Al-Qadr, the Majesty, revealed at Mecca, 5 verses. There's 22 verses in those 15 passages, by the way. The very first revelation of the Holy Qur'an is contained in the last chapter, is suitably followed in arrangement by one that relates with the revelation. When the revelation of Al-Qur'an began, it was the Night of Majesty, one of the last 10 nights of the month of Ramadan, the best 10 nights of the year, which first witnessed the shining of the light, which was destined to illumine the whole world, and the coming of the first revelation on the Night of Majesty, which gives its name to this chapter, contained a clear indication that the most majestic of all revelations was now being granted to the world, and that the majesty of revelation as well as its recipient would be established in the world. This chapter is unquestionably one of the very earliest revelations. Chapter 98, Al-Bayna, the clear evidence, revealed at Mecca, 8 verses. The Holy Prophet, who received the mightiest of revelations, or that revelation itself, is here called the clear evidence, the words supplying the name to the chapter, because this revelation, as this chapter shows, contained all the pure and essential teachings of the previous scriptures. It may not be one of the very early revelations, but there seems to be no doubt that it is a Meccan revelation, such as being the opinion of the majority. Chapter 99, Al-Zilzal, the shaking, it could be said to represent half the Quran, revealed at Mecca, 8 verses. This chapter is entitled Zilzal, or shaking. The word occurs in the very first verse, and hints at the severe shaking which was destined to bring about a transformation first in Arabia and latter in the whole world. This shows the connection with the last chapter, which speaks of a transformation being brought about in the world by the Prophet. It is one of the earliest revelations. Chapter 100, Al-Adiyat, Al-Adiyat, the assaulters, revealed at Mecca, 11 verses. This chapter receives its title from the prophetic mention of the assaulters in the first verse, showing that some of the great disasters spoken of in the last chapter were to be brought about by means of wars. This proved true not only in the time of the Holy Prophet, but its truth shines still more clearly in our own day, and the unprecedented wars of our time are no doubt a precursor of a great spiritual awakening, even as they proved in Arabia 13 centuries ago. As regards to its state of revelation, the chapter may be classed with the one preceding it. Chapter 101, Al-Qarya, the calamity, revealed at Mecca, 11 verses. The repelling calamity of this chapter, which gives its title, is the same as the shaking in the last chapter, but the date of revelation is also about the same. Chapter 102, Al-Takathur, the abundance of wealth, revealed at Mecca, 8 verses. This chapter, which is appropriately entitled The Abundance of Wealth, from the occurrence of the word abundance in the first verse, states that vying with one another to have wealth and more wealth is the great impediment which keeps men away from the real object of life, and therefore to make them realize it is sometimes necessary to divest them of some of these comforts. If it is for this reason that divine wisdom sometimes requires disasters to be brought upon men. Hence, this chapter is also connected with the previous chapter, which speak of disasters. The truth is what is stated here was never so clearly realized by the world as it is today. The chapter is one of the earliest revelations. Chapter 103, the time, Al-Asr, revealed at Mecca, 3 verses. This chapter draws attention to the testimony of time in showing that those alone who prosper, who accept the truth, and hence its title, as against those spoken of in the last chapter, those who are led away from the real object of life by making the acquisition of wealth its goal. We are here told that only those prophets who accept the truth and exhort others to it. The chapter is one of the earliest revelations. Chapter 104, Al-Humazah, the slanderer, revealed at Mecca, 9 verses. As opposed to those who are spoken of in the last chapter as believing, doing good, and enjoying truth and patience, which is part of why people talk about this chapter as if that was the only revelation that would be enough. We have here a description of those who, instead of doing any permanent good, amass wealth, instead of enjoining truth, slander others, hence the name of the chapter, Al-Humazah, the slanderer. Occurring in the first verse, it is one of the earliest revelations. Chapter 105, the elephant, Al-Fil, revealed at Mecca, 5 verses. This chapter is entitled Al-Fil, or the elephant, on account of the presence of one or more elephants in the army which invaded Mecca with the object of destroying the Kaaba. This, the keep at Mecca. This happened in the year which the Prophet was born. The army met with a crushing disaster and was annihilated. Thus did the crushing disaster of the last chapter overtake an iniquitous people. It is one of the earliest revelations. Chapter 106, Al-Quraysh. The Quraysh, forms an attachment from one thing to another. Is that what the term Quraysh means? Revealed at Mecca, 4 verses. This chapter is closely connected with the last, and in fact continues the subject matter, reminding the Quraysh of the great benefits conferred on them because of their guardianship of the Kaaba. For this reason, the 2 chapters were sometimes read together, leading some to think that this is a portion of the previous chapter. The date of revelation is also the same. Chapter 107, Al-Ma'un, Acts of Kindness, revealed at Mecca, 7 verses. This chapter gives expression to the prominence which Islam gives to helping the needy and uplifting the poor. Anyone who pays no attention to this is spoken of as belying religion. Prayer to God and help of the poor are repeatedly spoken of in the Holy Qur'an as the 2 foundations of Islam. But here we are told that even prayer is a mere show, for them, if it does not generate feelings of love and sympathy for humanity. Hence the title Al-Ma'un, or Acts of Kindness. The word itself occurs in the last verse. It is one of the very early Meccan revelations. Chapter 108, Al-Kawthar, the abundance of good, revealed at Mecca, 3 verses. As against the abundance of wealth spoken of in chapter 102, which leads many away from the real object of life, this chapter speaks of the abundance of good and of the means to attain it. The 2 means to attain it are here stated to be prayer to God, which fills the heart with the noblest of aspirations and sacrifice, which means devoting one's life to the service of humanity. It is one of the earliest revelations. The other is down to the very smallest good, basically. Chapter 109, Al-Kafirun, the disbelievers, revealed at Mecca, 6 verses. The disbelievers, hence the title, are told in this chapter that they shall be requited for their misdeeds, while the Prophet and the faithful will reap the reward of their deeds. It belongs to the early Meccan period. Chapter 110, An-Nasr, the help, revealed at Mecca, 3 verses. This chapter speaks of the great divine help from which it receives its title. The victory which the Holy Prophet endeavors in the cause of truth were crowned. According to Ab, it was an indication of the Holy Prophet's approaching end. Bukhari, chapter 65, 92. Ibn Umar is reported as saying this chapter was revealed during the last pilgrimage of the Holy Prophet, and that he lived only 80 days after his revelation. It was therefore revealed at Mecca during the Medina period, towards the close of the Prophet's life. As a complete chapter, it may be said to be the last revelation of the Holy Prophet, and coming down at Mecca, it showed how those wonderful prophecies announced in utter loneliness and helplessness were now fulfilled by the Prophet visiting Mecca with the whole of Arabia at his feet. Chapter 111, Al-Lahab, the flame, revealed at Mecca, 5 verses. The chapter shows that the fiery tempered opponents of truth led their lives in heart-burning, which assumes the palpable shape of flames of fire in another life. The chapter is titled Lahab in reference to this, or in reference to the name of the Prophet's uncle, Abd al-Uzza, who was in deadly opposition to the Prophet, Abu Lahab being his kunya. Occurring in the first verse, the chapter thus deals with the end of the opposition to the truth, the heart-burning in this life, and the palpable fire in the hereafter. This is an early Meccan revelation. Chapter 112, the unity, Al-Ikhlas, revealed at Mecca, 4 verses. This is really the concluding chapter of the Holy Qur'an. The 2 chapters that follow only show how the protection of the Lord is to be sought, and gives the sum and the substance of the teachings of the Holy Qur'an which is the declaration of unity in the divine being. Eklos means the purification of a thing from dross, and it is this chapter that purifies the unity of God from all dross of polytheism and other misassociation, and is called Al-Eklos. The chapter is one of the earliest revelations, and each of these last three is said to be as a third of the Qur'an. Chapter 113, Al-Falaq, the dawn, revealed at Mecca, 5 verses. This chapter is, and the one that follows, both together known as Mu Awidatan, from Adha, he took refuge. Teach man how to seek refuge in Allah and betake himself to his protection. This subject being referred to in Meccan revelations as in chapter 16 and 41. The 2 chapters must have been revealed at Mecca, and most probably they belong to the early Meccan period. The stories regarding the revelation at Medina, as stated by some commentators, must be rejected as concoctions of a latter age. The chapters called Al-Falaq are the dawn, that word occurring in the first verse, showing that truth would ultimately dispel all darkness. Chapter 114, An-Nas, the men, we're using gender neutrals here, we're talking about all humanity, of course. The introductory note in this chapter may also be read here. An-Nas are the men. The name of this concluding chapter of the Holy Qur'an has reference to the fact that it is for the perfection of mankind that the Holy Qur'an has been revealed. This name has been taken from the opening verses of the chapter, in which God is spoken of as Rabb of men, i.e. their nourisher, unto perfection, King of men, the real controller of their affairs, and the Ilah of men, i.e. the controller of their hearts. And that is, well, there's a lot of footnotes, but I'm going to not do that this series.